Before we get started on making this delicious Salmon Wellington, Aunty Chitra says you need to make sure and have something nice to drink before you start to cook. So she's pouring herself a glass of wine and we're going to get started soon. The first step when making this dish is to go ahead and take your salmon and start to season it. So we have 2 long fillets of salmon here that we've just split up into about 4 pieces each. And Aunty Chitra is going to go ahead and season it with some black pepper. Now, there's minimal ingredients that are used in this recipe. You're going to see all of them as we go through the recipe in the rest of this video. And of course, as usual, I'll have them all in the description box down below, so it'll be easy for you guys to see exactly what goes into this dish. So she's getting some black pepper evenly coated on each of the pieces of salmon, and then we're going to move on to the next part. The next step is to go ahead and season your salmon with some salt. Now, we are using salt to taste. Some people like different variations of salt in their dish, so make sure you add the amount that you would prefer. And at this point, Aunty Chitra is continuing the same process on the other side of the salmon. You want to go ahead and add some more salt as well as some pepper. You want to do this so this way all of the salmon gets evenly coated and gets an even amount of flavor on both sides. And of course, Miss Amelia wanted to get involved, so she's going ahead and adding some black pepper to the other side of the fish and just getting it evenly coated on that side. Once you've seasoned the fish, you want to go ahead and set it aside and begin working on the puff pastry that's going to encase the fish. So what we have here is just some store-bought puff pastry. We took it out of the fridge, and I recommend that you leave it out for a couple of minutes prior to making this, so this way it could come to room temperature and be a little easier to roll out. For us, we were in a little bit of a rush, so we just started rolling it out and it was a little hard to do so, but it's totally fine. What you want to do is basically just thin it out a little bit, because we find when it comes out of the packaging it's a little too thick to make this dish. So that's why we go ahead and thin it out. And the rolling pin that we're using here is actually my great grandmother's rolling pin, so it's always really nice to use something that an older person who's not here with us anymore has passed down to us for us to use. Once you've rolled out the 2 pieces of puff pastry, it's time to go ahead and place the fish on top of it. So we're placing all 4 pieces of the salmon on top of this puff pastry, and I'm going to show you guys what we do next. Now, I wanted to mention that we did have 8 pieces of salmon in the beginning of the video, but we decided just to make 4 Salmon Wellingtons with these 4 pieces and cook the other 4 pieces separately. Once you've placed your pieces of salmon onto the puff pastry, it's time to top each piece of salmon with some spinach and artichoke dip. Now, this is just some store-bought spinach and artichoke dip that we got from Sam's Club. I'm sure you guys could get it from any other supermarket, and if your supermarket does not carry spinach and artichoke dip, you could also use plain spinach dip. You can also feel free to make your own and put it on top, but we just decided to take the simple route and use the store-bought. I also wanted to mention that when you put the dip on top of your pieces of salmon, you want to go ahead and just spread it out evenly, as you guys can see Aunty Chitra is doing right now. The reason for that is because when you go ahead and put the other layer of puff pastry on and you seal them to put in the oven, you want to make sure that it's nice and even so it doesn't start to ooze out on either of the ends of the Salmon Wellingtons. So Aunty Chitra just picked up the other piece of the puff pastry. She's laying it down evenly over the top of the salmon pieces, and that's the reason why when you're rolling it out, you want to try to get both sheets of the puff pastry as even as possible and as equal to each other as possible. Once you lay them on top of each other, you're going to go ahead and just pat it down and pat the sides down so this way it can match up with either ends. After you've gotten the other layer of puff pastry on top of the salmon, it's time to go in with either your pizza cutter or a very sharp knife and just cut the whole thing in 4 equal pieces. Now, you want to be careful and cut just the puff pastry so this way you don't accidentally cut into the salmon and the filling. Once you've cut the Salmon Wellingtons into their individual pieces, it's time to close up the ends. Now, the reason why we do this is so this way that spinach dip does not ooze out of the side. You want to make sure to close them really well. So Aunty Chitra and Amelia, they're going ahead and they're just crimping the edges of each of the Salmon Wellingtons. All you do is basically take the ends of the dough and keep folding it over into the actual Salmon Wellington until you get a nice little crimp, as you guys can see here. And before we go on to finishing up these Salmon Wellingtons, my cousin Daniel just wanted to give you guys another tip on how you could close these Salmon Wellingtons. He wanted to let you guys know that you could also take a fork and go ahead and crimp the edges of the Salmon Wellingtons as well. Now, whichever way you choose to do it, the taste is going to be the same and it's going to taste great. Once you've gone ahead and crimped the edges of all of your Salmon Wellingtons, you're going to place them onto a tray that you've lined with some parchment paper so this way they don't stick. Once you put them all into the tray, you're going to cut 2 to 3 little slits on the top so this way the air can circulate while it's in the oven. Now if you do not do this, you run the risk of allowing your Salmon Wellington to burst or start to melt away and open up in the oven. You really want that air to get in there and circulate. So once you've gone ahead and done that, you're going to beat about 1 egg and you're just going to go ahead with a small brush and you're going to brush the tops of each of these Salmon Wellingtons. What this is going to do is give the tops of the crust a beautiful golden brown color and a nice crunch. All of our Salmon Wellingtons have been beautifully prepared. As you guys can see, that nice egg wash is on the top of them and it's going to give them a great color while they're in the oven. So as of right now, we're going to pop them in an oven that's preheated to 350 degrees and we're going to leave them in there for about 20 to 25 minutes or just until all of that puff pastry gets nice and golden brown and that salmon is cooked through on the inside. Alright guys, we went ahead and we pulled our Salmon Wellingtons out of the oven once we saw that they had a beautiful golden brown color. When we cut into them, which I'm going to show you a little pop-up of in a second, all of that salmon is moist and juicy on the inside. The spinach dip added such a great flavor and the puff pastry was beautifully flaky and beautifully golden brown. So I want to thank Aunty Chitra for showing me how to make this amazing dish. This dish is perfect for the holiday season coming up really soon. It's great for any dinner party or any function. It's definitely a crowd pleaser. So I hope you guys give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you're not subscribed yet and leave your comments down below. I'll see you guys in another one of my awesome recipes.